Welcome back. My name is Patrick Nolan. I'm an attorney licensed in the state of Missouri. This is Pat Talks Law. This is a windshield time, and I'm sitting in my car. I'm not actually driving anywhere at the moment. And part of the reason I'm sitting in my car is because I need to use my computer for this one. Unlike most windshield times, which are just shooting from the hip and talking, this one is going to have a little bit more meat to it, for lack of a better way to say that. For those of you that have been involved or have followed the Missouri medical marijuana environment for any time, you have already been aware that there are some pretty significant issues. There are problems with scoring. There's allegations of corruption. There are other issues that have come up and have been disclosed over the past couple of years as this has come up and gotten approved. One of the significant problems that we have dealt with, especially in regards to corruption and self-dealing, has been some of our political leaders who have completely abdicated representing the people in favor of lining their pocket. Now, that in and of itself is sadly not news in today's political environment, but it is a bombshell. Some of you are aware of the report that has been released. There has been a medical marijuana document production findings and alleged interference with the committee investigating the corruption in the process. Well, a report was released, and I have a copy of it. We will make it available on the through YouTube. You'll be able to download. I'll have a link to it in the description for this video. And you should read it for yourself. Of course, I'm going to summarize and discuss it, but it's something you should definitely read. I had broke a story a while back about a coming deal on the settling the lawsuits and expanding the number of licenses available for medical marijuana. A source of mine had advised me that that's the deal that was reached between attorneys, governor's office, and where they were headed. After we did that video, I was contacted and told that MoCan Trade Association had lobbied the governor very, very hard and put the kibosh to that deal. So first, for those of you who are actively involved in the legalization movement and medical marijuana movement, I want to apologize for breaking that story and possibly harming the outcome of additional licenses. It is my understanding that as a result of the lobbying that the governor got, they put the kibosh to that. Now, does that mean permanent? No. Does that mean that's all that's going to happen? You know, all the reasoning for why such a deal was a valid thing is still very logical. It is still the best path forward for Missouri and indeed for Governor Parsons. However, this report sheds a lot of light on the motivations, on the loyalties that are in place, and the problems that our state has. So, with that in mind, let me start by just summarizing. I'm going to read from the summary of this report briefly. Now, the report is alleging that the executive office, executive branch, Governor Parsons, was interfering with the committee's oversight work. Okay, they have what they claim are credible allegations. And there are a number of questionable things that this has revealed. Okay, first, allegations of executive branch interference in the committee's work and potential implications that raises are disturbing. Unfortunately, a careful and thorough review of records provided to the committee raises other serious concerns. The records raise conflict of interest and other concerns with Veracious Compliance Solutions, one half of the blind scoring company Wise Health Solutions. These include DHSS's director's connection to the head of Veracious shortly after the passage of Amendment 2, through at least one individual who later received multiple medical marijuana licenses. They also include a record in the Medical Marijuana Division's possession containing a credible and specific assertion that Veracious had a vertically integrated consulting client in Missouri. Now, let me unpack that paragraph just a moment, because it is extremely important. What they said is that there are conflicts of interest between DHSS and the company hired to do the scoring, including at least one party who received multiple medical marijuana licenses. Folks, this answers the question as far as whether or not the system was rigged. It was. This is what this is telling us. They have credible evidence that the system was rigged. And we're going to discuss that further at length. So, Veracious Compliance Solutions is one half of the blind scoring company Wise Health Solutions. One company with two parts. Part A, Part B. Part A was scoring applications so licenses could be awarded. Part B was lobbying and filling out applications so licenses could be awarded. And doing so with a connection to DHSS director. Folks, this is not good. So, the record contains in the Medical Marijuana Division that's under Mr. Fraker, contains credible and specific assertion that Veracious had a vertically integrated consulting client in Missouri. The people scoring the applications were hired by somebody that was seeking a vertically integrated license, which means cultivation, dispensary, possibly testing as well. Multiple licenses. The records prompt questions as to why DHSS officials have so far failed to disclose the matters within them to the committee. They become part of what is now a frustrating series of departmental obfuscations and obstructions in response to warranted concerns and questions about the state's medical marijuana licensure process. Add to them DHSS is waving away entire portions of Legislative Oversight Committee's records request with no justification or explanation provided other than a 4-sentence letter vaguely referencing constitutional applicant information privacy and attorney-client exemptions that often appear blatantly inapplicable. Then consider the false and misleading letter sent by the Medical Marijuana Division to all applicants on Friday, September 4th, 2020, that inaccurately insinuated that routine legal discovery requests in 3 applicant appeals were instead a final frontier that, if crossed, would force public disclosure of all application contents. It is difficult to read it as anything other than a clarion call to applicants to join forces with the MMD against both litigants and legally recognized transparency. Now, again, there's a lot in this paragraph to unpack. Okay, DHSS officials have so far failed to disclose matters within these records to the committee. Folks, the people running the department are lying to the legislators who are trying to verify that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Okay? You have two lies. Lies of commission, lies of omission. It is still a lie. Departmental obfuscations and obstructions. They're throwing everything in the way to keep from having to answer direct questions. What did you know and when did you know it? Now, DHSS is waiving entire portions of the Oversight Committee's records request. Okay? They're hiding behind the privacy in the Constitution. Now, the privacy clause that was in Amendment 2, by the way, Amendment 2 was written by people involved with MOCAN trade. That's an important point. People involved with MOCAN trade. Now, MOCAN Trade Association are the people that introduced Director Williams and worked with the governor's office to get the scoring system set up. The same scoring systems that awarded licenses to key MOCAN trade officers and investors. This is corruption at its simplest. Frankly, I should hope that the legislature turns the whole damn ball of wax over to the feds for a RICO investigation. Let's start throwing some fuckers in jail. Now, the pattern of conduct across the executive branch speaks loudly, but the problem is not that individuals who invested significant financial resources and time into their applications, expecting they would get a fair shake, took notice of inconsistencies and are questioning whether they did. The problem is not that their elected state representatives are stepping in to try and get those answers. The problem is not the scrutiny of these problems may also result in scrutiny of individuals in or who have beneficial relationships with the governor's office. The problem is that there's evidence of problems with Missouri's medical marijuana licensure process, but that the executive branch's response is to go to increasingly inappropriate lengths to deny they exist and obstruct efforts to shine light on them. I also want to point out to you that the $1.3 million that the department has spent defending lawsuits for this licensing process is money that was taken directly out of the pockets of Missouri veterans. That money is supposed to be going to support Missouri veterans, to provide for the Missouri Veterans Hospital, to provide housing for homeless veterans, to provide treatment for veterans who have, suffered from opiate addictions because they haven't had medical marijuana to take care of their pain, as opposed to morphine, OxyContin, and the like, which we also know is very addictive, and that was intentional. So, the problem is the executive branch's response to go to increasingly inappropriate lengths to deny the other problems exist and obstruct the efforts to shine a light on them. Folks, sunshine is the greatest cleanser. That was true when I was a reporter, and it is true now. If at this point the legislature abandoned this oversight effort in the implementation of Missouri's medical marijuana program, then it is complicit in this obstruction. Suggestions for additional committee document production requests, witnesses, and other matters for it to consider will be provided separately. Below is a listing of topics discussed within this memorandum and the sections that follow. 1. DHSS's undisclosed first connection to Mr. Westrom in December 2018, at the request of a then leader in marijuana trade group Mo Can Trade, who ultimately received several licenses. Let me repeat that because this is key. This points directly to some of the corruption that we're talking about. Yes, that's a loaded word. Okay? DHSS's undisclosed first connection to Mr. Westrom in December of 2018 at the request of a then leader in the marijuana trade group Mo Can Trade, who ultimately received several licenses. Mo Can Trade is the group that my source advised me lobbied the hell out of the governor after we broke story about the governor was going to do something with the licensing issues by awarding licenses to the appellees that meet the minimum requirements. DHSS internal documents suggesting Veracious had at least one consulting client in Missouri at the time it bid upon and received the scoring contract. They're representing a client who is seeking a license, who has to apply and have their application scored. At the same time, they're bidding on being awarded the contract to score the applications. Wouldn't you like to be that license applicant? Okay? That is straight up corruption. That is straight. There isn't even a question about that. Okay, the state officials that approved the bid for Wise, there needs to be a real investigation with real criminal penalties. DHSS emails documenting procedural issues with application scoring with unclear impact and resolution. There are a number of emails that shows that DHSS was aware that there were problems with the scoring process. DHSS did not clear that up, knowingly and intentionally. Now, what this is good news for is everybody going forward with their lawsuits against the state. This is just pure fodder for them. They are going to hammer the crap out of the state in court. I mean, I've been talking to a couple of lawyers. One in particular cannot wait. He's almost drooling at the idea of sinking his teeth in the state in court. And I don't blame him. DHSS is withholding pursuant to questionable jurisdiction, DHSS is withholding pursuant to questionable justification records requested by the House. They're not turning the records over to the legislature. Look, they're hiding the ball. They did something wrong. They're trying to cover it up. Remember, in every conspiracy you ever heard about, it's not the illegal act that gets people caught. It's the cover-up. Governor's office involvement with developing medical marijuana bonus scoring rules and the market minimum study. Okay, this is a direct connection to the governor's office. Not implication that, Dr. Williams is working in the executive branch and is therefore, responsible to report to the governor. Point 5 here is direct connection to the governor's office. 6, the legal framework surrounding allegations of executive branch interference in the committee's medical marijuana oversight activities. This is a bombshell for the governor, and Democrat candidate Galloway is probably going to hammer this. Okay, the legal framework surrounding allegations of executive branch interference in the committee's medical marijuana oversight activities. The executive branch is being accused of interfering with a House committee's oversight job. I got to tell you, if it was President Trump doing that, the Democrats would be raising holy hell on the Hill and screaming to high heavens about how he's violating 87 different laws. Right now, they're making that allegation about Parsons. The difference is the Democrats aren't in power in Missouri. Yet, they keep doing this. The governor keeps going this way. The Democrats will be in power. And it'll be Governor Parson's responsibility. You want to know why the Democrats are going to win the governorship in Missouri? This is it. 2/3 of Missouri voters were in favor of medical marijuana. 2/3 of Missouri voters are not going to be happy about the games that are being played. Now, I'm not going to drag this out. I'm already at 20 minutes. I apologize for going so long. I'm going to post a link to this PDF and this report in the description. Please go and read it. Read it all. We're going to talk about it more. We're going to talk about it at length. Okay? So, what this says is, shortly after, and I'll just read the first paragraph, DHSS introduction to Mr. Westham in December of 18. Email records provided document the first connection between the company that would become WHS and DHSS, a connection which DHSS officials have not previously disclosed to the committee. In a sequence of emails on December of 2018, shortly after Amendment 2's passage, an individual in marijuana trade group, MoCan Trade Association, MoCan, Mr. Jack Mitchell, introduces DHSS Director Randall Williams to an individual who is involved in Nevada's implementation of the marijuana licensure process, Ms. Rebecca Gaska. Several other individuals in MoCan leadership are copied on that exchange, including several who, like Mr. Mitchell, were involved in ventures that were ultimately fortunate to receive medical marijuana licenses. Several other individuals in MoCan leadership who, like Mr. Mitchell, were involved in ventures that were ultimately fortunate to receive medical marijuana licenses. Folks, you might want to take a moment, open up the windows before that steam coming off your head sets the smoke detectors off. Because if this isn't setting you on fire, then nothing's gonna. Ms. Gasker replies to Mr. Mitchell's email informing Director Williams that she is following up on Mr. Mitchell's request to connect the director to individuals who have successfully set up marijuana licensing programs. She also informs the director she's responding to Mr. Mitchell's request to connect the director to a person whose resume description is an exact match to that of Mr. Chad Warren Westham, head of Veracruz. Director Williams brings another DHSS employee into this conversation, which ends on a note to schedule a call with Ms. Gaska. No further communications between Ms. Gaska, Director Williams, Mr. Westham, this employee, or any combination thereof are included in the records. No further communications were disclosed in the records. Why were those communications not disclosed? I went through and I read this last night. And after reading it and making some decidedly smart-ass comments, my wife looked at me and she said, well, now you know where that $11 million went. No, we don't know where the missing $11 million is. Frankly, I think it is in MMD's bank accounts. I think they're holding on to it to help pay for the litigation that they've caused. They're going to have to keep paying their attorneys as they fight this crap out. I'll be surprised if the litigation bill isn't ultimately $3 to $5 million. But it could even go higher. Discovery is starting, and as discovery is promulgated, the cost of this litigation goes up. So there's a very real possibility that the litigation support bill is going to be very high. I don't think anybody is stupid enough to have pocketed $11 million from the state kitty like that. They're going to do it like they did here, where they rigged the system to get licenses that apparently they shouldn't have freaking gotten. So, yeah, I really, really, really hope that this entire thing is handed off to somebody at justice and it gets properly investigated and charged. At this point, the governor's opportunity to resolve these issues by merely demanding that DHSS issue a finding that demand requires more licenses and award the licenses to people who have outstanding applications that are under appeal. I don't know that that's a viable option for the government anymore to make this go away. I think that this is a stain on Governor Parson's. It certainly is a stain on Mr. Williams' credibility. And it shows that our medical marijuana in Missouri has been corrupt from day one, which would mean, since it appears to have been corrupted from day one, that the money the state took for all those license applications was taken in bad faith. The people applying for those licenses did not have a real chance of getting a license. If they took that money from those applicants in bad faith, and they didn't have a real chance of getting a license because a fix was in for a number of them, that poses a very serious question as far as what's going to happen. I would not be surprised to see if some of the license appeal lawyers are putting together some form of a class action to sue the state. A very difficult thing. A very, very difficult thing. But I don't believe that the state was operating in good faith based upon the information in this report. So please like, subscribe. We're going to be doing a lot more on this. Read this report. It is important. Share this report. Hell, share this video. I don't care, man. But this needs to get out, and it needs to be talked about. It needs to be disclosed. It needs to be shared in the sunlight. And frankly, somebody needs to be asking the governor some very serious, pointed questions. It's time to demand real answers instead of these games. And from what I've seen already in this report, there probably needs to be some prison sentences handed down. There are some people that need to face the music for what they did. Thank you. Hit like, subscribe. I'll be talking to you again later.